All right, everybody. So we're looking at the distributive property, and we're going to do a couple problems here. And first, we're going to break down what the distributive property actually means. And when we're dealing with the distributive property, it can show up in one of two ways. Here's the first way over here. On the very far left, we're looking. It can either show up with a plus sign or a minus sign. And what the distributive property tells me is that I have something resting against parentheses, which means this is multiplication, and something either being added or subtracted. Okay. And what this tells me I can do is I can actually multiply across that addition symbol or across the subtraction symbol. So in the first case, I wind up with a times b, because I'm just following the multiplication here. I keep the plus sign and a times c. Now, if we don't like formulas, we'll see how this plays out with numbers here in a second. And at the bottom, it's the same thing. I do the a times b, I keep the subtraction symbol, and I do a times c, whatever c is going to be. All right, so this is the basic guidelines on how the distributive property works. And in the live lesson, we'll go over some different ways of actually applying the distributive property and using it. But one thing I wanted to do with you guys today was, I don't know if you're one of those people that when you see somebody do multiplication in their head really quick, and you go, how did you even know what that was? This is where they can do it. Okay, they're able to see the problem as the distributive property and are able to manipulate it really quickly in their head. And so how does that work? Okay, so here we have 16 times 12. So if I'm going to go do this in my head, the way I view this as is I see 16, and then I know I can split this up into two numbers that I can work with very easily. 12 is just 10 times 2. And now when I go to do this in my head, I'm thinking, well, 16 times 10, I know that's 160. I know 16 times 2, I can do that in my head, that's 32. And I know that I need to add these together. So this is 192. So the reason why you can see people doing these multiplication problems really fast in their head is because they understand the distributive property, and they can kind of organize their thoughts around, well, I can split one of these numbers and do some work where I already know how to do it. And just to show you again that I could have done this a different way. I could have said, well, this is 10 plus 6. 16 is 10 plus 6, and I could have multiplied that by the 12, and it works the exact same way. I know this is 120. 12 times 6 is 72. And when I add those together, I see that I still get 192. So anytime you see your math teacher or anybody doing problems really fast in their head, this is where it's coming from. All right. The last problem, and let's look at this one. This is more or less what you'll be doing in pre-algebra and in algebra. So one of the things I like to do is I like to label everything and say, okay, there's my A, there's my B, there's my C, because I look at it back to the original problems here. Okay, and I see that I'm dealing with subtraction, so I'm dealing with this guy down here. And I know my first number, and I know whenever I distribute this, I'm going to get AB minus AC. Well, A is 6, B is 2x. And notice I keep these linked together because the subtraction sign is what's actually defining the B and the C here. For the C, again, A is 6, C is 4. And now I can look at this and say, well, 6 times 2x is 12x, minus 6 times 4 is 24. And there I just distributed. This is another way of looking at it. If you like using the formulas that are way over here on the left, instead of drawing the arrows and just saying, well, 6 times 2x, this is another way you can do it. You can lay out the formula and label the terms. I actually love doing it this way because it helps me keep organized. We're going to be looking at another way that has to deal with rectangles in the live lesson. So your task for today, I want you to write 3 problems that will require distributive property to solve. Okay, so we're looking for three problems that are somewhere like this guy up here. Okay, I want three of these. So bring me three of them. Uh, make sure you're making a mix of addition and subtraction. And so you have a number outside. So you'll have a number outside the parentheses and then two numbers being either added or subtracted. Make sure there's a variable inside the parentheses somewhere. So mix up your variables, whatever you want to do. Make sure one of them is a variable, or both can be a variable, however you want to do it. But write out three problems of your own, and we'll see you guys at the live lesson.